Previously on the Game On podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but a good grand final, all the same. And I mean, back in the day, the big four were alive and well, weren't they?
Yeah.
You know, Port and Sturt, Nord and Glenelg, and you look through the grand finals at that time, and those teams were pretty routinely part of it, weren't they? Which was great.
And then playing under Graham Campbell, of course.
Interesting, that one.
Yeah,
he's a different cat. Obviously, start of '83, I think we lost our first 7 before he got sacked.
Yeah.
And a lot of us loved him because he was playing us, and we threatened to go on strike and all sorts of silly things, and the club reneged and reappointed him. And then we played South the following week and got done by 8 goals again. So we lost our first 8.
8, yeah.
But then got close to making the finals again, as it turned out. I think we had to win maybe 2 of our last 3 or something. I think we lost 2 of our last 3 or something like that.
I think you needed results to go your way as well on memory, I think.
Yeah. So, but we loved Graham, and, some funny stories. Strangely enough, the one that comes to mind was at the parade, and the rooms were a bit funny in those days. There was sort of the away room had sort of another room attached to it, and you couldn't really see what was in there. And Graham was sure Nord had their spies in there, and that they were listening to the pre-match. So when he pulled the blanket off the whiteboard with the team on there, he read the team out, Christian names only.
Oh, my God.
So, it was Tony and Stephen and Christopher and Wayne and Alan. And we're sitting there, honestly, trying not to laugh.
Yeah.
And he used to eat a lot of apples. And if you were sitting too close to him at the time, you were getting bits of the apple, and all sorts of stuff was going on. And he's reading the team out, thinking that Nord are listening. And before we ran out one of these games, I remember him saying, and don't forget Neville Roberts, he's a bit like 007. He's got a licence to roam. He's 009.
Jeez, Rocky will love that. I'll bring that up with him. Yeah.
I'll never forget him saying, we're running out, like, laughing.
Oh.
So it sort of didn't go all that well at times. We loved him, but it probably wasn't ideal, and in a lot of respects. And at the end of the day, the club made a call on him at the end of '84, and fortunately, probably appointed Studley, which was a great move, and probably the move we needed to sort of discipline us a bit. And
I do have to bring up one quick game with you, Simo. At Glenelg in '83, Pete set the scene for you. The legs are up. It's the last quarter. Glenelg are coming. Nord have coming the ball out of defence. Error. There's a kick out on the full, so it's Glenelg's free.
Mm-hmm.
The Nord guys have run ahead of the ball. Jeff Wilson's marked the ball. I'm sitting next to him in the crowd at Glenelg. Simo's trying to grab the ball off Jeff, and we're yelling at the Nord guys, come back, pick, McDermott up, pick. And Simo's going, give us the fucking ball. And so I don't know if you can remember that, Simo, but I did say to Jeff I'd bring that up.
I remember there was 2 blokes who wouldn't give me the ball.
Yeah.
On the far side.
Far side, correct. Yep.
And I just wanted to get hold of it and get it on, because I think we were down at the time, or the game was close. And you didn't do anything that I wouldn't have done myself, I can tell you that, because the game was in the balance and it was important to get it on. But I do remember it, and I remember swearing, and that wasn't a nice thing to do in front of young people and kids, but you had to do what you had to do.
Oh, it was a bit of fun. It showed the tribal warfare.
Exactly.
You boys were truly the 19th man on that occasion.
Oh, we were
directing traffic, holding onto the ball.
Yeah, Chavo, get back there. Don't worry, it was full on.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I love all that stuff. It was, in a different world, and no one got offended. And, it was just part of the game, really, and you walked off afterwards and you moved on. So better days, really, boys.
Sportscast SA presents Game On. Game On. South Australians' destination for everything sports. Local, national, and international sports. AFL football, soccer, basketball, golf, baseball, tennis, cricket, and any other sports played in this wide world. And we're going to have a blast doing it. So sit back, relax, and let's do this thing. Welcome to Game On.
Welcome to Game On. My name's Pete, once again joined by Malcom and Tony Symonds. Part 2, we've split it up over a couple of weeks. Fantastic that he was actually able to go back to the Bay, do some coaching, and probably still partying as we speak.
Oh, he's a character, Simo. He's great SNFL man. He gets the whole photo, gets life in general, helps a lot of people. Person I've got enormous respect for, and yeah, he's a Bays legend. Absolute pleasure to have him on the show, and look forward to adding him to our Past Players, Past Legends series that we do play during the week for those who do keep up with some of our podcasts. And, let's get into today's episode. Yeah, a bit of illness and a bit of technical trouble, so we've been away for a bit, but we do have breaking news, Pete. All right, before I play Around the Grounds, give us your breaking news. Do you realise, right at this very second, if there was an earthquake, a hurricane, a cyclone, I'm not really fussy, if that hit the whole of Australia and lasted till March, South Australia win the Sheffield Shield. Winner, chicken dinner. Oh, breaking news. Absolutely. Sure. We've just been having a bad millennium. It's okay. It's time for the Redbacks to come good. All right.
Around the Grounds.
And we will talk a little bit more about the cricket in a minute, but let's start off with the AFL. It's trade period. The silly season is coming to a little bit of an end. Todd Goldstein from North Melbourne to Essendon, a bit of an interesting one. I'm surprised it's that it's taken this long before he's moved to try and have a crack. And probably a little bit surprised that Essendon, if Collingwood were interested, which is what was the word, I would have picked Collingwood in a heartbeat if I was Goldstein, but you don't know. There's a lot of these behind the scenes deals, picks, et cetera, et cetera. Just going to run through 3 or 4 of them here, top 3 or 4 players. Matty Flynn from GWS to West Coast. Yeah, look, I think he had a bit. I admit I wouldn't have minded him at Adelaide. I think he offers a bit. I mean, obviously the flavour of this particular trade period seems to be Ruckman, and that leads me into Brodie Grundy from Melbourne to Sydney. Deal got done relatively quickly too. I think that's a big pickup for Sydney, and a ground which suits him, the small SCG, gets the chance to work with Taylor Adams again, Goulden. I think that's a big pickup for Sydney. I really do. Absolutely. Lachie Schultz from Fremantle to Collingwood. Yeah, that was an interesting one for me. Obviously, he's pretty highly related within the system, and bang, 4-year deal with a trigger for a 5th, which probably leads to the next movement, which has just happened in the last half hour or so in Ginnivan going to Hawthorn. Correct, yes. I think in that one's interesting. Like, he didn't read the room. I don't think he can be the sharpest tool in the tank. To decide to go to the races on the night before the grand final, I just reckon it's dumb. Like, I would have checked with the leadership group. Yeah. Just done something. You want players to relax. You want players to, be themselves to a certain degree. But then you also don't want to put yourself in a situation where that it potentially someone says something and it ends up blowing into Mount Vesuvius. You know what I mean? Big races meeting, runs into a Brisbane supporter, someone push. Look, I just would have now. Hey, I'll just give Pendles or just give Darcy a ring or a text. Yep. What do you reckon? Well, McRae seems approachable too. McRae. Yep. Bang. Look, young fella, we'd prefer if you didn't. We're not going to stop. We're not going to ban you. No. But common sense is go to the movies, whatever, but don't put yourself at risk. Yep. And I just think that would have been common sense. And then when McRae's had a crack at him on Saturday night afterwards, like the word was around he'd gone and McRae wasn't happy.
Well, then on the Monday, the Mad Monday, he dresses up as a jockey. Not the smartest move.
Yeah.
You're in the shit a little bit.
Yep.
Let's just pull your head in and display a bit of
decorum,
contribution, a bit of contrition.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's an interesting one. At the end of the day, he's a premiership player for Collingwood. I'm surprised that they let a talent like that go relatively easily. But if there is some internal problems there,
I think the Crows just gone bang. No,
we're not settling for it. Yep.
The no dickhead policy.
Yep.
They've been bang, really approachable, the fun, enjoyment, but no, we're setting elite standards.
Yep.
And he's just gone bang. No, not on, see ya. I think it's as simple as that, personally.
Taylor Adams was another interesting one from Collingwood to Sydney. I mean, Sydney seem to have been, at this stage, they seems to be the winners. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But, yeah, Taylor Adams, highly regarded, obviously, at Collingwood, and yet sees himself being on-traded to Sydney.
Yeah, his midfield minutes had fallen away. He's got pushed to a half-forward flank, so he's gone out of that initial rotation with Dacos, and obviously Dacos is only going to get used more and more.
Yes.
Pendlebury seems to be like a fine wine and is never going to finish.
Wow.
How good was his last quarter?
Absolutely.
So he's read the room in terms of then gone, no, I'm in and under. I can't really play anywhere else.
Could have Adelaide had a bit of a look at him, considering they're looking for that midfield depth?
Yeah, but I think Adelaide are looking more the outside
rather
midfield.
than the inside. Yep,
yeah.
Fair call. And then that leads me, obviously, to my last one, which was something that we sort of knew quite a while ago, that Tom Doedee being traded, obviously, from Adelaide to Brisbane. That doesn't surprise me in a way. We talked about it a little bit on air. We talked about it off air. That was probably what was going to happen. Brisbane obviously taking a bit of a risk with the 2 knee reconstructions that Doedee has had, but I think he fills that gap that they're missing. And really, they only lost the grand final by 4 points.
Oh, look, he's a very good player. That's not that. But Adelaide did have a long-term offer in front of it, and his manager has played Russian roulette, gets injured. So, I don't blame Adelaide in that regard, and I can't blame Doedee in the end. He's offered 2 extra years, so it's effectively offered probably another $1 million somewhere else. Will he be mad not to?
Again,
so I get both sides.
Like we've talked about before, when it comes to a job offer and somebody's offering another couple of $100,000 over a 2-year period, you pretty much were going to look at that one and favour that deal, which is, you're trying
to explain to people constantly, where people only see in their team, why would someone want to leave us? Well, he's been offered a better job elsewhere. That's all it is.
Yep. Fair call. The other one from Adelaide, we'll get on to Port Adelaide in a second, was Shane McAdam. Took a little bit longer than usual for this one to go through, considering I thought it was pretty much a done deal. But I think Petty was obviously the linchpin to the whole process. And then yesterday, obviously, McAdam going through.
People carrying on saying, Adelaide folded. Look, he only played 7 games this year. Stupidity, isn't it? He's 27. He's been inconsistent. I reckon a second rounder is about
fair.
Right.
Yep. Sticking with the Petty, is there a last-minute gasp from Adelaide to get him? Obviously, seen in Adelaide playing golf yesterday. I know players all know each other through junior football and other representative football, and often hang out in their off season. They're in their off season. That's what it gets down to.
He boarded with Darcy Fogarty, so I don't see any big deal about that. Look, I doubt it.
Yep.
But ironic. It's quite amusing that at Norwood we considered him more of a forward. Mm-hmm. He certainly played a bit of both ends.
Yes.
And he did play down back as well. So not that. But we could see both assets well and truly in him. So it's quite funny at the moment where Adelaide seem to be trying to get him to play down back.
Yes.
And Melbourne are going to play him up forward. So, it is.
It is. It's interesting.
It's a tick to Harrison.
Absolutely. Yeah. And obviously he's not ruled out an opportunity to come back to Adelaide at some stage, so which is really good. All right, we move on to Port Adelaide. Seemed to be very, very quiet-ish through the early parts, but today they've received Ivan Solo from Richmond.
And Jordan Sweet's come through in the last few minutes. Jordan Sweet, Modbury boy, he was in the same year as my son, which is interesting. It's two ruckmen. So at the moment, right at this very second, there's those two. There's Valenic, Lysette and Hayes. I'm sure that by the end of the day, that won't be the case.
It'd probably be Lysette, maybe the one that might.
You would think so.
Might move on.
I wouldn't be surprised St Kilda coming to the record.
Okay, I thought maybe Collingwood, but
maybe
we'll see how we go on that one. Zerk Thatcher from Essendon to Port. Do we think Port's going to get that one done?
Oh, I'm sure. All these last deals come in the last half hour, which is a bit bizarre. Look, depends where Swap's ending. I think it'll end up getting done. Look, do I think those few? I think Soldo's could be pretty important.
Mm-hmm.
Soldo's not a bad ruckman, but obviously an injury record as well. He's done a knee before, so you just got to wait and see there. But it's Soldo. If you're rucking and I've got the chance to have Horn, Francis, Rosie and Butters at my feet,
you'd be licking your lips, wouldn't you? Absolutely.
You don't have to do too much to look okay.
No, absolutely. And then Esava Radigali is probably the other big one
that'll happen.
Port need to really happen on the basis that, they're for the here and now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also agree with the point. It'll be very interesting how Radigalia and Alia work together.
Mm-hmm.
Both probably the plus one is their best aspect.
Yep.
Probably neither of them are great negating, so it'll be interesting.
Should be interesting to see. Obviously, closes very, very soon. Probably just after this, just before this podcast comes out for the week. But it's going to be interesting to see how that falls. Big winners for this year. We talked briefly. Probably Sydney at this stage.
I think Sydney. I think St Kilda have done okay. I reckon Henry and Dow are a pace,
yes,
for Marvel in particular.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that's an added aspect.
Yep.
I do think Schultz is a good player who Collingwood have got from Freo.
Yep.
They've given up a lot for him, it's interesting that you've already got Hill, who's won the Norm Smith.
Yes.
You recruit another small forward as your number one target. So it's an interesting choice. You've still got Elliott for the mid-size sort of small forward. So,
and I think that's also why Ginnivan probably left as well. There was a little bit of that to it as well.
Yeah.
What about losers not losers as such, but what about teams that haven't really participated too much within the draft that could be on the slide a little bit next year?
Probably you would like to have seen Adelaide get a little bit more. I think Burgess will play down back at Adelaide. He did play down back at Westies a bit before going to Gold Coast, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's the role they've targeted him for, not so much up forward.
If Adelaide get Petty over the line and they have Burgess as well, things completely change for Adelaide, don't they?
Things change quick. So it's another, purely as we speak, it's about another 4 hours to go. So a lot of things could happen yet.
Absolutely. All right, we'll leave the AFL trade disputes until next week. Yep. We'll definitely know who's ticked off on and who's not, and then we might have a little bit of a look at how the teams may line up for round one based upon some of those recruits. Adelaide's draft hand seems to be pretty good. Port Adelaide's in a reasonably good position. Position as well.
Yeah, Port have played the finale with recruiting Horn Francis last year and that side of things. So, I think
Dersman's probably the other one that that'll
be
probably
involve that. Yeah, if I was Port, I'd want a bit more back than just that. I don't regard that.
Yep.
If I was Essendon for mine, that's an IKEA start the car.
Yep.
So, wait and see.
All right, mate, we move on to the cricket. Yep. You're beaming as we speak. I actually didn't think you'd rock up. I thought you'd still be with the team, enjoying the spoils of a very, very, very good win against New South Wales.
Yes. Look, great effort. Obviously, a couple of players in particular, but it was fascinating to be watching a game at Adelaide Oval where the ball was doing a fair bit. And I actually said, Dizzy actually walked past yesterday and stopped and said hello. Well, you almost have to at a Shield game because there's only about 50 of us there.
Yep.
So you've got to greet each person with reverence.
Yes.
Which also, the Saka, I might as well have my tee-off moment and that. Charging $10 to get in and $17 to park your car, I think, is just absolute stupidity. So the $10 to get in, you're employing 4 staff to do that. Now, they did that today. Mm-hmm. Cricket went for under an hour. Mm-hmm. So you've done that. There weren't 100 people at Adelaide Oval today.
Yep.
You've done that, and you've got to pay a minimum of 3 hours for a particular wages for someone's shift. So it's an insane, idiotic decision by the Saka where they have got this thing where, we've got to give the members better value, so we'll charge for Shield games. Not, hang on, we've accepted the West Indies again. Mm-hmm. So the South Australian cricket lovers have got West Indies again after last year where the bar was more exciting than the cricket. And that, just pull your head in, Saka. Yep. Use a bit of brain.
A bit of common sense.
Back to the cricket, the good.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. McSweeney, 64 in the first innings.
And then yesterday, on a deck which was doing plenty, he pulled the big shots back. Didn't go for the big expendable smash drive. Just nudged and worked it. And then when our 9th wicket fell, he's on 72 at the start of the over. He goes kabang, kabang, kabang. So he brought up the 28 runs. Well, as I said in the bar, I was in the bodyline bar, and I said to the guys, we should all be signing a piece of paper and take photos because of the 300-odd people at Adelaide Oval in 30 years' time, 3,000 will have claimed they were there to watch young McSweeney deliver. And,
obviously top scorer in the first innings, 100 in the second innings, which you've just talked about there. Good to see South Australia actually digging their heels in a little bit, and a couple of really good catches too, which we did talk about with Ryan Harris as part of one of our interviews that he said that they had done a bit of work on that. And I think it was Lehman took an absolute screamer in the slips there that needed to be repeated a few times.
It was a fair catch by Jake, and I reckon he will let his old man know that Buff wouldn't have got hands to that. I did leave Adelaide Oval with a very happy father-in-law of Jake today too. McSweeney took a really good one today as well. Mm-hmm. So, it was a performance on a wicket where you thought, South Australia again.
Yes.
290 odd, but all of a sudden, actually, no, this is a fair score. And to be there yesterday on the third day, the ball was still zipping around and moving a lot.
Yep.
And Dizzy said no batter ever fell in on it. And I said, because I thought that's the best wicket I've seen here. And Dizzy said, and I said, yeah, okay, I get that, Diz, but how about McSweeney? He's fought. Hughes has fought for New South Wales, Daniel Hughes in that dig. So, yes, it was hard to bat on, but I like to see a wicket actually examine a batter's technique, and some of the batter's techniques failed dismally on it. So,
Fair call. I'm glad... the drop-in pitch obviously starting to
it was interesting. You
do a few things.
Originally thought were going to be flat,
and
it moved around. It was fascinating cricket, which a lot of times 300 versus 400 Adelaide Oval. It's not fascinating. Mm-hmm. It's more waiting to that last hour where you need 80 odd off.
Yes,
13 overs, 5 down. All of a sudden, there's 2 wickets caught on the fence and. The situation jazzes the game up, not the wicket, which in this game I thought...
The wicket did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. South Australia winning by 186 runs, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, bring it on. Australia sitting obviously near the top of the table.
And let's have that game. The current score as we speak of the game in WA... Tasmania batting first, 439. WA declaring at 8 declared for 574.
Yeah.
What a boring,
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. We'll move on to international cricket. Australia just struggling a little bit in their first few games of the one-day World Cup.
Yeah, look, we need more from the top order and then need a bit more of a contribution from Steve Smith. And that, look, I don't know. For me, this World Cup's lacked lacked oomph.
Yes.
Now, it's fascinating that being in India, because the stadiums are so big, like there was one game where there was 45,000 there. Well, it looked like there wasn't a person there. It did look like a Shield game at Adelaide Oval. So it's funny, isn't it, that how much a game in a smaller oval where it's packed, how much that adds to the contest.
Yes.
And I think we saw that when COVID happened. You watched footy and there were no spectators, and it just
took
lacked.
a little while to
you know,
adjust to. Yep.
So I think that's part of it for me. Where
I know I'm not flipping channels and sticking to the cricket like I used to. That's just me personally.
Likewise.
Like I'll check score. Yeah, that looks all right. Maybe watch a couple of overs, change back, move around. But there's no urgency to come back to it at the moment.
Oh, look, and I think probably until the last couple of days where we've had England lose to Bangladesh and now the Netherlands beat South Africa, that all of a sudden that's probably created a bit of the interest whatever. And look, for me, it's not Australia struggling. That for me, it's just, I just think so, a bit of high arm. Probably it's a case of overkill a bit. And for me, I admit I'm one of those weird people who actually follow Shield cricket. Yep. So, yeah.
And the one day as such, there's just
they're
something
fallen out of favour.
Yes, it just hasn't quite. It's not gelling. It's not working the way it is.
It's not got what it used to have with it. Hasn't got the same interest. We've lost the passion for it. Not that I'm a big fan of 2020. Personally, I think 2020 should only be at domestic level. I think it adds nothing internationally. And I've got no problem with it being the saviour at domestic level. But internationally, I couldn't care less whether Australia won in 2020.
India sitting top of the table at the moment with New Zealand with 3 wins from 3 games. New Zealand actually play tonight. South Africa, Pakistan, England, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Australia, Netherlands and Sri Lanka round out the top 10.
Yeah, so it's throwing the cat amongst the pigeons a little bit with those last couple of results. So it may jazz up a bit from there, but for mine.
See how it goes.
Yeah, I'm a bit vanilla about it.
Fair call. Can't say any more about the shock losses. I'm lost for words for it, but these are what these tournaments sometimes are all about, aren't they?
Yeah, probably that is the one thing that 2020 cricket probably broadening up, probably getting more publicity and getting more and more countries involved. And I think they showed the extraordinary stat of Nabib that he's now played in winning games against 40 so-called country. Okay, there's Kuwait there and this and that. You wouldn't even know it unless it had been printed on the paper. But it does show when you then look at that, there is a lot of cricket as a worldwide game has far more countries playing it than we realise. So I think the 2020 has probably helped. And then that, the expats move around. So you've probably got a fair few Pakistani and Indian people living in countries, Netherlands, South Africans there, and
the US have their own league. I actually watched that on KO. I came across it and stopped for 5 minutes and went, hang on, the USA have got cricket league.
Very much so.
It's going absolutely berserk over there. So very, very interesting. All right, let's move on to the AFLW. Round 7 completed. Adelaide defeating the Bulldogs by 42 points.
Yeah, it was a ho-hum game.
It was. I had down on my notes here that it was a bit of a scrappy affair at times.
I thought the Bulldogs, Matthew Clark thought it was the best the Bulldogs had played all year. And just, they ran the ball a bit okay and all that. But it was, and one thing I am stunned about him, he did put Ebony Marinoff in his coach's votes. I thought she was terrible Friday night. Ran to some shocking spots. Look, I did say to a couple of people afterwards that I think I've got to keep reminding myself that we grew up playing sport and you pick up things best and learn best as a kid. So to try and introduce as an adult and that. So Ebony is very much see ball, chase ball, get ball. And look, Jimmy Allen's a person we're hopefully going to have in the future. That was a bit of his weakness. So he's not on his Pat Malone. She's not on a Pat Malone in that regard.
No.
But where she was calling for the ball sometimes on no ebony, you're better off getting 18 to 25 touches, not 35 to 40, and doing more damage, hurting the opposition more, which is what she did against Melbourne the week before.
Yep. Speaking of Adelaide's ball movement, once again, just seems to be very smooth. It's methodical. There's that traditional, player running past somebody who's marked the ball, keep the ball in motion, changing the angles. Adelaide have done it.
Yeah, the Irish girls have been
well.
very important there. Kayla, who won the Rising Star, was important in that way.
Yep.
Prowse has been good in defence. So they're strong in defence.
Yes.
And they're, it's not like they relied on Chelsea, originally relied a lot on Chelsea Randall and Erin Phillips. Well, they've gone way past that, and it's become a lot more of an even spread.
Yep.
Where Hatchard probably their best player now.
Mm-hmm. Hasn't she gone from strength to strength too?
She's a good player.
Absolutely.
So, big game this week.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that one in a minute. Port Adelaide running into a red-hot North Melbourne. North Melbourne winning by 63 points.
Yeah. Port probably need about 2 more years of getting the real good draft choices in if they get Indy Rashid in and all that at the moment. Yeah.
And we have talked about that, the teams that have come later to the AFLW program who are playing catch-up at this stage.
Yeah, and look, and it wasn't ready for 18 sides, and it's still not. It's nowhere near ready for 18 sides, but so it's been built sort of the wrong way round.
Yeah,
and we all understand why.
Yeah.
So that's why it's going to take a bit of catching up.
Couple of other results, obviously Essendon defeating Richmond, but really at this stage, Carlton Collingwood, I watched a bit of that game there. At this stage, it looks like Melbourne, Adelaide and North Melbourne seem to be the contenders.
With Brisbane maybe
in a 10-round season.
Yeah, yep, no, that it is true. Now, I'm not sure we've got it where we've got it here on the system. We'll bring it up now, though. In terms of Naja Allen, how I am urging anyone out there who thinks that Allen's been hard done by, learn the system. I'm sorry, it was just straight away I thought to myself, watching it, I was doing the scoreboard and then watched the incident later. Mm-hmm. It's an automatic 3 weeks. Yes, she intended to bump fairly, but she didn't display due care. Didn't realise who she was bumping was so much shorter. Bumped to the head. Now, the player got taken off for the concussion test.
Yep.
Now, as soon as that happens, it is a fair chance the grading is going to be regarded as severe.
Yep.
The Crows tried to get that downgraded.
Yes.
Which would have resulted in 2 games. But the player goes over for the concussion test. You're struggling to get it downgraded.
Yep.
Unfortunately, Naja was a lack of awareness. Again, just a bit of lack of footy now. Mm-hmm. Again, that'll hopefully is going to come in years because now the girls playing from the earlier level,
yes,
they're turning to protect themselves. They're doing that sort of thing now, which was the cringe moment where first women footy started, where you weren't so nervous that someone was going to seriously hurt themselves and that. So that's gradually getting better. The standard is getting better, but it's still a long way to go.
You brought up a very, very good point that I wanted to. The Allen incident, very good bump, but like you said, as soon as it goes to the concussion protocol, totally understand it, understand the duty of care, et cetera, et cetera. So, can't be too unhappy with the result of that.
Yep.
But at the same time, it was a football incident, so it's a little. For me, it's in that grey area.
No, for mine, it's not. She bumped to the head. Sorry, you've got to have more awareness of the player next year. Now if you want to argue that 3 games in a 10-round system is too much and there should be downgrade, there should be different grading in that regard to the men, that's a different argument.
Yep.
I got no problem with on that basis.
Yep.
But of which, quite correctly, obviously the fines for something are far less because they're not getting paid what the guys are. So that's already built in there a little bit. So I think it should have a 25% loading, less, whatever, however you want to phrase it.
Yep.
So, that then becomes 2 games.
Yep.
I think that's fine.
Yep.
But don't argue. For mine, there was no defence for what she did.
The other thing, Feckle. The other thing is just watching some of the AFLW games this year, the adaptation to, players standing up and tackling
they're getting
rather than pulling them down or potentially putting themselves in a risky situation. Very interesting that the physicality of the AFLW game has gone up, I believe, a notch this year. But the awareness of when they are tackling, they're standing up. Will we see that more in the men's game over the next year or two, or we already have?
Yeah, I think we have. I think, and I think probably where you notice it more at the AFLW because it is it's a contested tackling game more,
and a little bit slower movement.
They haven't worked the quicker hand. The hands are getting quicker, but there's obviously a fair bit to go to still go. So I think that's why it's more such a contested game. Probably Norwood Oval also contributes to that a little bit.
Yep.
So that was part of it.
No, fair call. Interesting to keep an eye on that with a couple of rounds to go. And Adelaide at this stage seem to be just that one step ahead. We'll see how we go.
Yeah, I think Melbourne. I'd still have got Melbourne personally and North Melbourne. So big test. So Adelaide, huge fortnight. Brisbane and then North Melbourne here on the Sunday, next Sunday, Sunday week at 2:35. So
absolutely. And like I said, we'll go on to those rounds very, very quickly. All right, and we'll move on to this week's games. Obviously, Adelaide playing Brisbane up in Brisbane.
Yep.
How do we see that one playing out?
Big test for Adelaide. So Allen, they obviously lose Allen. Unfortunately, lose Abby Ballard for the year with him, and you knew straight away that was probably as most blatant Rico as we've seen in a long time. That you knew immediately that was and she knew as well.
Well, the opposition was not that far away from her, but she was covering her ears, going, I don't want to know about it.
Yeah,
and then obviously Port Adelaide playing the Suns at Alberton Oval.
Yeah. Look, I thought Gold Coast were okay here a couple of weeks ago against Adelaide, so I'll tip the Gold Coast in that game.
Fair call, and I'm going to be on the same boat. All right, let's take a very, very quick break, mate. We'll come back with some tennis, some basketball, and a little bit of rugby union.
And a fascinating cricket stat you uncovered as well.
Yeah, in Happy Days a bit later on.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
All right, we'll continue with tennis, mate. Leighton Hewitt has made a bit of a bold call on Alex de Minaur, basically stating that he thinks he can make the top 10 in the next 6 to 12 months and potentially take out an Australian Open.
Yeah, it's an interesting call, isn't it? And look, de Minaur probably is the closest as a player to Hewitt, that he's the
determination,
and
chase everything down.
The evident battery to get it back, the Energizer battery back and back, and try and force the other player into making an error, not so much hit a winner themselves. So, whether de Minaur's going to have the weapons, we've just got to wait and see on that one. I like Leighton's positivity.
Yep. I mean, he's backing his man.
Yeah, he's backing his man.
I totally get it.
Him for that.
But Australian tennis is just starting to go through a little bit of that change where there seems to be a lot of players now between 220 and about 140. Then there's another lot between around about 100 and the top 35-ish. So Australia's starting to the wheel's starting to turn a little bit more, which is really positive.
It is positive, which is it'd be great for a big bang, someone to arrive, but they don't grow on trees.
Unfortunately, they don't these days. Interesting point of view. I read an article about some players using some tennis balls overseas in some tournaments that felt heavier on the basis that it creates longer rallies, et cetera, and players are sort of saying, well, that means we're obviously out there a little bit longer. The risk of injury, obviously, with the heavier balls, could play a little bit of a part. It's an interesting concept that players are making or bringing up, that you can go from one tournament to the next, and obviously you can use a Wilson ball here and a Schlesinger ball there and a head ball there and a Babolat ball there. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, I still think there should be some change up. Then you shouldn't just play with the same thing. You don't want the same thing, the same surface every week. Like, there's not the variation of grass so much as there used to be and all that. So I actually think the ball's a little bit different. That should be more encouraged, but that's from an outsider.
Yeah, no, fair call. Racket technology is another thing that's changed dramatically.
Oh, yeah.
That, a little bit like cricket bats in a certain degree.
Yeah.
If I can relate it to you in that
Yeah,
that regard,
they have. Yeah, like the old
technology,
wooden tennis rackets.
Yeah, it's completely changed.
Like, good luck with getting the ball back with that. With
absolutely.
those.
And the last one for tennis, mate, Ash Barty, could she make a comeback?
Yeah, I think we're getting our hopes up a little bit too high. I think parenthood might be on Ash's radar a tad more than tennis. I doubt it. It'd be great. I think we'd all love to see it.
Yep. I only bring it up. There was an article that came out the other day. She had a racket in hand. Yeah. She was doing a bit of a junior clinic. Obviously had the Wimbledon hat on.
I think I'll draw the same analogy on that as Petty playing, having a hit of golf with Fogarty. Yeah, I don't see any big deal on that.
A lot of comments, obviously, on the photo going, please come back.
Yeah.
We want you to come back. So we're in agreement there. So a little bit of fun there for the tennis. All right, we move on to basketball. The Adelaide 36 is not the start to the season they were hoping for, with a 1-4 start.
At least there was a win against Illawarra though, so at least that's something. And there's been another new signing too.
That's right.
So things happening. We've just got to wait and see. Probably the interesting thing with basketball is the 36ers haven't been great now for a fair while, yet they're still getting really big, decent crowds and consistent size crowds.
So that leads me into my next point is, why are we failing to perform when expectations seem to be high-ish? I won't say they're going to go out there and dominate like a Chicago or a LA Lakers when they have all the stars. I'm not suggesting that at all.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to gauge where we feel this optimism is coming from the Adelaide 36ers.
Not sure. I'm more the other side of it, where I think the other sports should be going, well, hell, what in the hell are basketball doing correct to getting these people along consistently? What could we do better? Mm-hmm. That's where I'm more on the angle of where I think other sports should be trying to learn off basketball.
Absolutely.
SANFL, get out and have a look. What can we do that basketball are doing?
Yeah.
They're getting the kids in. What can we do?
Yep.
So.
Good call. And winnable games coming up against Southeast Melbourne, Phoenix and the Wildcats over the next week or so.
Yeah, so hopefully they could get it back on a bit more of a keel. We'll just have to wait and see. But coming from behind on the last game against Illawarra last week, so that just gives us a little bit of bob hope.
Once again, always pushing the proverbial uphill doesn't always help, but yeah, you're right. Coming from behind, maybe a little bit of momentum. We've seen teams do it in other sports where a good quarter here and a good quarter there can transfer into a good game, and then a couple of good games, and then so on and so on. So. Good luck to the 36ers this week, and we'll have a little bit more of a look at it again next week. All right, rugby union. Eddie Jones linked with the Japan job, and he was grilled about it.
I think there's a fair bit of more than just a bit of linking. I'd say there's a fair bit of truth in that way. Signs a big long contract, and 3 or 4 months in, wants out.
What's happened to the Wallabies?
Yeah,
they were the darlings of Australian sport, along with cricket. They were the two hardest tickets to get at times, were to the Test match cricket, either in Melbourne, Sydney, and the Wallabies. You really just couldn't, wherever they went, you couldn't get a ticket.
Yeah, they're certainly they're on the nose in more ways than one at the moment, so we just got to wait and see.
Is that a case of administration?
Maybe.
Something's breaking down administratively. Is their player development not quite in the space that it needs to be?
Probably suspect a bit of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously not close enough with it. We're in South Australia. not a rugby state.
No,
personally, not a.
No, but if I had to compare it,
sure.
But if I had to compare it to someone, say like the Redbacks, we've talked about that on many occasions, where the administration sometimes can be at odds, with the team a little bit, and vice versa, and which players should be playing and not playing, and so. Do we see the Wallabies potentially going through that phase at the moment? But it seems to be dragging.
Yeah, as I probably think the same thing with the problem with most sports. If there's problems there, there's probably a bit wrong with most things.
Yep.
It may need a complete overhaul.
Yep.
So
okay, all right. Let's finish up on that one. There, we've got Tony Symonds part 2 of our interview with him. We did split that up over a couple of weeks. And really looking forward to chatting or replaying our chat with him as well.
Yep.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe. Past players, past legends, past legends.
As underdogs was probably even a greater achievement in some respects.
Right, a bit of gloating here, quick, Pete. It's out of Moose Henwood. I'd never met him before, and it was last year after a Sydney game. One of uni mates said, let's catch up at the Cathedral afterwards. And we're chatting away.
Yeah.
One of the guys says, Rubble, you're the sports nut amongst us. That's Russell Parker's brother over there. So I've yelled out, hey, mate, Russell Parker, 7 for 13, including a hat-trick to win Glenelg, the 73-74 district premiership.
Yeah.
And he walks over and goes, fuck me, it's Rain Man. And that. So I've sold him a copy of a book, and then Moose has gone, nah, you're not going to get me, pal.
Oh,
so,
really?
So he's Googled a Nord reserve side. And remember back then, all they did was initial, your first initial. So T Symonds, it wasn't any of your name.
Yeah.
He goes, righto, if you can name every single player, this is from a Nord 1981 budget he Googled somewhere, I'll buy a book. Money for jam, Simo. Very easy, that one. He threw the money on the table and went, too bloody good. So, a bit of fun.
You are the best, so he would have loved that.
He did laugh. It was good. Yeah. So.
He's a beautiful man, an absolute beautiful man. And, poor old Russell Parker. He played a lot of juniors at Glenelg, as you know.
Yeah.
Good cricket and all the rest of it. So, he's good friends with a lot of good older mates of mine, too, that come through the Glenelg grades in those days.
Yeah, no, he's a good cricketer. Part-time leggy in one Glenelg, played state cricket and just got thrown the ball when Glenelg were virtually gone in a district final, and he took a hat-trick and turned the game. So, yeah.
Did he play league football at Glenelg, or did he go to South and play?
It might have been South.
Yeah, I think he went to South to play league footy. I don't think he played seniors at Glenelg.
I just remember that because at that stage, Australia were in New Zealand, and Ian Chappell made a big thing of it amongst the Australian team, so which Russell obviously heard about and greatly appreciated. So anyway, right. 87, you're on the other end of it on a, and probably North, did deserve one in that time as well. But true that, mate. Although you're at, you're at Hawthorn, aren't you?
Yeah,
apologies.
It's a funny story though. I played my year at Hawthorn, didn't play many senior games, and we had an unofficial football trip to Tasmania. They used to call themselves the Splinter Group. Though there's about 20 of them: Buckenara, Rod Lester-Smith, Dermot, Jason, a lot of really good guys. Chopper Hanley, who came over here.
Yeah, for Centrals, yeah.
Anyway, we're at a pub in Hobart, and the game was broadcast on the ABC nationally at that stage. And I said to Jason Dunstall, who was sort of my mate in those days, can we go to a pub where we can watch it on the TV? And he's gone, well, yeah. So they rang Andy Bennett, who was mixed up with Hawthorn, of course. And he picked us up 4 at a time in his car and drove us to this hotel. And by the time we got there, 15 minutes in the first quarter, Glenelg were already 5 goals down. And I'm going, well, that's not good. But I said, don't worry, we'll beat them. And anyway, half time we're getting thrashed, and at the end of the game I'm sitting there and I'm just broken hearted. And Jason walked over and grabbed me and said, Simo, It's not your fault. Come and have a beer, mate. But I was just shattered. I couldn't believe we could get done by 80-odd points. But,
Yeah.
I mean, you understand the psyche of footballers. They lost 2 in a row. There's probably no way knowing they're going to lose 3 in a row to the same club. You just, whatever you had to do, you wouldn't let it happen. And they were just ultra aggressive that day, probably in the same vein as we were the previous 2 years, and thoroughly deserved it. And, my cousin Mike Armfield played in it, so I was happy for him. And Michael Noonan and David Tiller, they're some great guys getting around their side, and Wilds and all the rest of it. So no harm done, really, in the end. It was probably fair enough.
How about your year at Hawthorn, though? You didn't probably pick the easiest side to go and try and get a game and make an impact, though, mate.
Yeah, look, Chris McDermott and I had been offered a 3-year deal each to go to Brisbane Bears at the start of 87, so the end of 86. And Chris decided he wasn't going to go, so then I decided I wasn't going to go because, as you know, we're pretty tight. So Glenelg signed Bone up almost overnight, straight away. And then I remember going home late to his place at Merino one night, and his sister had left a note saying Hawthorn were chasing him, but he signed to stay with Glenelg the next day. So Hawthorn must have looked around and gone, who's next? And must have been me. So they started chasing me. Anyway, I signed to stay at Glenelg. Harry offered me a deal, and it was 2.5 times what I'd been getting before. And so I signed to stay at Glenelg. And then a week later, Harry came back to me and said the board aren't happy to pay me the money. And I said, well, if that's the case, I'll go to Hawthorn. So I actually got him to sign a waiver to get me off the contract. And Alan Jeans was ringing me, and it was sort of a funny time. And I wouldn't ever think I was probably good enough to go over there, but I was always intrigued to know what it would be like to be over there. And I just didn't think it through, really. And I walked out of training the first night, which wasn't until January. I didn't go over there till January, but I trained pretty hard over here on my own. I walked out the first night, and I looked around and thought, it just might be hard to get a game here. And
just a little.
that's how it proved to be. And I didn't get a game in the 2 night games we played. I played 1 or 2 of the trial games, and the last week before the first game, they always have an intra-club trial, which they still do these days, really. And it was a tribute to Dipper Day, and Dipper won the Brownlow in 86. So the last thing Dipper was interested in was playing an internal trial game the week before the first game. So I'm standing him, and I'm desperate. So I played really well, probably got best on ground in that game where Dipper wasn't really interested or trying. And I got picked the next week for the first game against Carlton at Princess Park, which was a sellout. It's only held 35 or 40,000.
Yeah.
It was a funny story because it was Stephen Kernahan's first game as captain of Carlton. He'd been there in 86.
That's right.
It was his first game as captain. And I'm lining up, and Hawthorn are unfurling the Premiership flag from 86. And I'm standing there about 5 along with my hands on my back thinking, what the hell am I doing here? And I look over at Stephen and made a funny face at Stephen. And Stephen made a funny face back at me as well because it was his first game as captain. So it was like 2 16-year-olds from Brighton and
from the Bay.
Thinking, how the hell did this happen? So that was a funny moment. But look, at the end of the day, I played that game, got dropped, played well in the twos, got picked again against Collingwood, I think. I think it was at Victoria Park. I can't even remember. And then got dropped for a few weeks, got picked again. And a couple of these games in the twos, I'm getting 40, 45 touches in the reserves playing for Hawthorn, which is sort of what you had to do to get picked. So I got picked again against Sydney and kicked my only goal and thought I was probably right. And a few of the players said you should be right. And anyway, got dropped after that game, and that was it, really. So Alan Jeans told me at some stage later in the year when I was talking to him about it that I ran too much and left my wing open, too open at times. If I didn't get the footy, they got exposed, and that was too risky. So he sort of made his mind up that they weren't going to pick me again, which was disappointing, seeing they picked me just for that reason, really.
Yeah, that is a bit bizarre. Yeah, because that was your strength. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know if they would have sacked me or not. They never said they were going to sack me. I went to Yabby Jeans and said, I'm going home. And he said they'd had a few phone calls from, I think, 3 clubs that wanted to talk to me. And, yeah, one of the big mistakes I made was I said, no, I'm going back to Glenelg. And you know why? Because I was petrified Glenelg were going to win a premiership without me in it. And as they nearly did in 87, they got rolled. And I was a bit small-minded looking back. I should have toughed it out and stayed. Could have gone to Brisbane again, or I think it was Melbourne or Footscray back in the day. And I should have hung in there or stayed at Hawthorn and toughed it out, because Hawthorn had a habit of making blokes play in the twos for a long time back in those days. And there's a million examples of it, but it's probably one of the few, if not only, well, it's not the only regret of my footy career, but it's nearly the main one, I'd say.
So you came back, and then Glenelg, it's good though that full credit to you that when you came back, you were still very much switched on, huge Glenelg man, and so it was another 5 years, and to go through playing your 200th game would have been huge too, Simon, for you always being such a bloody Glenelg nut. Yeah,
it was a funny story. I actually played my 200th game. Shows what a different world it was. I played my 200th game against Central Districts at Elizabeth, and the people from the club and the cheer squad came up to me and said, look, it's just too hard and too far for your 200th for your banner, so we're going to do it the week after at Footy Park. And I think I've got a photo of it somewhere. It's congratulations, Tony Symonds, on 201 great games.
That is a classic.
Yeah. Oh, it just cracks me up looking back now. But I just couldn't wait to get back and play at Glenelg. And I said to Laurie Rose one of the times, if I come back, I want my old number back, which they'd given away. He said, no, you'll get your number back, and all the rest. So, bloke called poor old Tony McTavish, who'd worn it for a year, had to go back to number 11. Which is probably a bit small-minded of me looking back, but I wanted my number back. It meant a lot to me, and I was always going to go back to Glenelg. There's no chance I'd ever go anywhere else. There was no discussion on money. It was, I'm coming back, pay me what you want to pay me. And I got injured a bit the next couple of years, pretty badly with, broken arm, like through the top of my arm and stuff like that. And that was before it. In fact, both those years, 85 and 86, for what it's worth, I probably missed 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 games both years. Once with a fractured thumb that they pinned, and one with a broken jaw and cheekbone, which I'd wired up for a month. So when I came back, I broke my arm right up the top near my shoulder, like snapped it through, got knocked into the fence at Glenelg Oval, and that pretty much buggered 1988 up. I tried to play again sort of 4 weeks earlier than I should have, and it just didn't work out. I played a bit of twos and desperately trying to get picked in the seniors for the grand final or prelim final, but didn't happen. So I had my share of it, but I was, really, really bought into it when I come back, and I wanted to come back and use my experience from what I'd learned at Hawthorn and set better training standards and all the rest. And it was probably, one of the great disappointments. We did not win another one when I came back. We had a few chances.
Yeah.
You then moved into obviously coaching in '95, and was that something that was on the radar initially, or was it something that you fell into?
The actual story was I was sitting at the Seacliff Hotel with Chris McDermott at the end of 1992.
Gee, why does that not surprise me? Yep, go on.
Yeah. And we'd always talked, all of us, about coaching and all the rest. And Bone was still well and truly, he's probably, if he wasn't captain of the Crows, Tony would have been. And Chris just looked at me and said, well, you're going to have to coach Glenelg. So I went to Victor Harbour for 2 years, 83, 84. And Choco was coaching Glenelg. And I remember, and Choco and I have sorted this out since, but Choco was in the paper saying that he would only coach Glenelg in 95 if he didn't get a better offer in the AFL. And I rang Glenn Elliott, who I'd never had never even met in those days, and said, "Is this what we've come to? Someone will coach our great club if he doesn't get a better chance, a better opportunity." He said, "Oh, it's not quite like that." And anyway, Bones said, "Well, you're going to have to pursue it." So I did pursue it through the board at the time. They kept saying, "There's no job there. Choco's doing it." I'm saying, "Well, that's not going to happen." And yeah, we were a bit clever the way we pursued it. Really, poor old Choco was probably looking for a slightly better deal, and Glenelg weren't going to give him that. And they knew I was sort of waiting in the wings. And looking back, I mean, I was probably too young for it. I was 32, single, it was probably not the right call. And I've said many times since, really, it would have been better for Glenelg if they'd kept Choco, because he was a far better coach than I was ever going to be. And it was hard for him because Glenelg people never took to him, being that he was a big Port Adelaide man. Choco was very single-minded, as we all know, and was always going to do it his way, and that didn't endear him, to our supporters. But, I took over a bunch of blokes who were probably sad to see Choco finish up, to be quite frank. Chiggy and Simon Hill and Alan Bartlett and blokes who'd been around for a little bit in those days, and that I'd played with, underneath would have been quite disappointed that Choco had gone. So it probably wasn't a great move, but I loved it. But it was a tough time because we didn't have the infrastructure. And I was working full time at Lenny's, or the Watermark, as it sort of was becoming at the time, and I had a full time job down there, running the bottle shop or running the hotel at one stage, and trying to coach Glenelg. And you didn't have really any support. There was no football director as such. It was sort of Glenn Elliott as the CEO, then me as the coach, and then you had a junior development officer. So we're trying to do the recruiting and interviewing players and all the rest while you're doing a full-time job. So it was really not a great time in my life, and it took me a while to recover from it, to be quite frank, because a lot of people don't know, I had 2 one-year contracts. I never had a 2-year contract. I had 2 one-year contracts.
Right.
So I was fighting for my survival every week, and I think both years we started off pretty well. We might have won 4 or 5 of our first 7 or 8 games, I reckon, but we just couldn't hold it together for whatever reason. And when you're fighting for your survival, you make a few rash decisions, and I was arguing with the board about stuff that didn't matter, and arguing with supporters after games, and front page of the paper for fighting with spectators and rubbish like that, which was counterproductive to what we were trying to do. And if I could have survived one more year, if I could have got into my 3rd year, I reckon I might have done it for quite a while, but I didn't survive, and got the sack, and went back to Victor Harbour for a year.
And
so a bit sad, really.
Your time, though, you've been in the pub game for a long time now, Simo, and I really want to commend you that you're really a community person in the pubs. Let's also be honest, you certainly helped a fellow player in Alan Stringer, and we're going to try and get Strings on at some stage. You helped Alan out, and I really want to emphasise people out there. Tony sees the whole picture, so we mucked around a bit here. We have the Glenelg stuff and a bit of fun, but I want to commend Tony that he sees whole community and does a lot of things behind the scenes for a lot of different community outlets, and sees the whole disability sector and all that side of things. So a massive thank you, society thank you probably is as good a way of phrasing it as any, but you get it. You get it, mate.
You know, he was going through a pretty tough trot for many reasons, as tough as anyone's done it, to be honest. And I used to ring him a bit, try and get him to some of the Glenelg functions, and even the SNFL past players function that I've been chairman of for maybe 15 years. And Alan actually used to say, "No, I've passed all that, Simon, thanks for calling, but I'm not interested," and sort of kept ringing him. And eventually we got met up and got talking about where he was at, and he was thinking about maybe getting back into a bit of work. And I said, "Well, let's just come and do something at the Warrenale and a bit of gardening and all the rest." And it just sort of got him involved again in, in the community, and it was good for a while. He met some people and made some good friends there, and he'd have a beer after work and all the rest of it. So he went through a pretty tough trot, and as we know, a lot of blokes from the 80s at a lot of clubs have been through something similar, and there just wasn't the support mechanism around in those days as there is now, and it wasn't all right to call out for help either, as it is now.
Oh, look, we're going through it with Nord at the moment. There's still a lot of... While we've improved, there's still a hell of a long way to go for blokes to admit, hey, I'm struggling, I'm not okay, and look, I'll be honest, when I brought up to Pete that I was going to try and get Tony to comment on our show, I did think of this angle as well, and I do really think it is something we've got better, but geez, we've still got a long way to go, Simo.
Oh, have we ever? And there's blokes at every club that, I mean, some of the clubs, the stories are just terrible, as we know, with terribly sad endings. I've had a bit to do with players from other clubs too that I've got to know over the years, as you know, Malcolm.
Yeah.
Because they're just really good guys, and you move on from football stuff, and if you don't, you're a mug.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because there's a bigger picture, and there's some sad stories around, but there is a bit of support around now. You just got. The trouble is, as we all know, people are good liars, so it's all well and good to share stuff on Facebook and all the rest of it, but you got to ring blokes. You got to meet with them. You got to look in their eyes and see what's going on, through their eyes, because blokes are very, very good liars for so many reasons, and you really need to get face to face with guys and really ask them, and don't always believe them. Ask them more questions and say, well, what do you really mean? Well, what's really going on?
Yeah.
And if you call them out a bit, quite often they'll sort of look and go, well, maybe they can tell, and you get more out of them. So, but it's a fine line, boys, as we know.
Yeah. And of course, Glenelg delivering this year, so you certainly had that highlight a couple of weeks ago, mate.
Yeah, it was just a river day. I mean, we've got a bad history of losing him at Glenelg, as we all know, but we were clearly the best side all year. I only saw, to be fair, 4 or 5 games because I was out. My son was playing footy
for Sacred Heart
this year, so I was out watching him every week. But when I had the opportunity, I'd go to the Glenelg game. It just looked like we were so well drilled, and it looked like we were sort of a long way ahead of most of the sides that I saw. So it would have been a travesty if we didn't win it. But ironically, and not being that close to it, I saw the game where we beat Sturt by 105 points at the Bay in round 10, I think it was. And Sturt had a couple of their better players out that week with the flu. And what I thought was that if we can beat the undefeated side, as they were at that stage, by 100 points, they must have played a few blokes who were crook as well that day, because they just weren't very good. So clearly the team we played in the grand final was a good side, and full credit to Sturt. They probably had a few players out, and we had a couple out, but they probably had more players out, and tough to ride out. And, to get within 4 goals, to be honest, was I reckon, a really good effort on Sturt's behalf. But I sort of felt like we were a 7 or 8 goal better side, but who cares on grand final day? You just want to get over the line. But it's really funny sort of watching it now. It's been, I haven't played since 1992. So sort of, 20 or 30 years ago, and the sirens come and you feel it coming, you stand up and you sort of get a tear in your eye. And I did the same thing standing next to Stephen Kernahan in 2019 when we won. And sort of, my kids have never seen me cry or anything, but you get a tear in your eye and you sort of got to take your sunglasses off to wipe your eyes a couple of minutes after the siren. It's sort of embarrassing, but I suppose it sort of shows you what it still means to you to see the club being in such a terrific spot. And, you would have said it the year before with Nord.
Oh, bloody oath.
Getting over the line the year before, and what it means to so many people and so many supporters. And, I see it all the time. Hotels are sort of around the Glenelg area, and you just see what it means to people. And yeah, it was a real thrilling day, and I didn't have too much to do with the boys on the Sunday after the game, but they all came back, the seniors and the reserves and all the entire coaching group. We had them at the Morford Arms on Monday all day from about 11 o'clock through to 7 or 8 o'clock, and I settled in a bit with them on that day and had a few beers and a real good catch up with coaches and players and some of the guys that I've had a bit to do with over the years. One-on-one situations like Lockie Hosey and Max Proud and blokes like that. So that's when it really starts hitting home, doesn't it? So great time.
I think a lot of that also comes from Glenelg were, to be honest with you, on their knees a few years ago, and a lot of the work that has gone on behind the scenes to turn things around. I think not only is a credit to the club, but I think it just means so much to obviously past players. And
Nick Chigwitten's been vital in that way. Keith Coleman's a bloody legend amongst you Glenelg guys. Past players wise and that. Yeah, you do a fantastic job, Glenelg. I've got to be fair.
Yeah, no, well, so do North, mate. They're group, they get on the hill there and all the rest of them. We run that bar where the old grandstand was, and any home game you go to, there'll be 15 or 20 of the boys working in the bar or having a drink. Normally more than that, to be honest. And Keith drives all that, and it's amazing. Like Peter Carey was president and still on the board, and he still does his shifts. Yeah. In the bar.
Yep,
so
I've
does
seen
Piggy
that.
And Bomber Willen, who's the David Willen, who's our current president. He does his shift, in the bar nearly every home game in between all this other stuff. And it's sort of a good catch-up time anyway, but it's just incredible the amount of guys who get around it. It's like a day out. It helps a bit when the footy's going well on the ground, but it just shows you, the strength of your footy club runs from your board, your president and your board downwards. And, we've had an amazing board over the last 10 or 12 or 14 years. Blokes who've done it for a long, long time and have been committed. And the only way they can get off the board now is when they introduce their replacement. It's got to be someone of a similar calibre, and that's how it works now. And, the results,
they do speak for themselves, yeah.
Well, poor old Brett Hand at the end, too, cutting him loose after making the finals 2 years in a row was a pretty tough decision. Everyone really liked Brett. He's a ripper bloke.
He's a great bloke.
He was doing a pretty good job, but the club thought they had to make the call, and in the end, it's a strong board that does that, and rightly or wrongly, they got a result this year. So not easy times to make those calls, and there's a lot of sympathy around for Brett. I'm sure he doesn't want our sympathy, but he did a great job and was a very popular bloke around the footy club.
He's a great bloke, Brett.
The footy club probably got to say they got it right because we won a flag, so not easy, but
obviously he's
associated with them still. Yeah,
the Nord link with Brett because he played at Nord and that, and some couple other links with Brett with the Robinson family and that. So
he was very well liked around Glower and Tear. He didn't have any enemies around the footy club.
Full credit to Brett. He's back in the teaching game now, and look, huge credit.
He'll live a lot longer doing that, although that's not that easy either.
Yeah.
But it's probably a bit easier than coaching, mate. We've all been there.
And we'll finish off. I'm currently looking at a photo of Tony Symonds carrying the ball with the Pioneer Homes as Glenelg's sponsor. You're actually holding the ball to kick on your left there, Simo, on a beer can in front of me. So I've started a bit of work with print wrap packs. So if there's,
that's right. Yeah.
And it does look it's a great photo of you, Simo. We will put that on our page as well. And just Pete's nodding in the background here. So anyone out there could contact us or Malcolm Rulebook Ashwood on Facebook as well.
Well, as you know, Malcolm, any football club, I took. We had a 1993 Premiership reunion this year at Victor Harbour Football Club, 30-year reunion. I was captain coach.
Yep.
And I got 4 cartons of those cans done up with the team photos.
Yeah.
All right? And we sold them as 6-packs down there, $50 a 6-pack, and we should have got more made.
And that's the sort of thing I'll be out and amongst with clubs trying to get clubs over the line in that regard as well.
And as you know, you've just got to email the photo through, and next minute they bring you a can and show what it looks like, and it's just incredible what they can do with this. So, good luck with that. I think that'll be a lot of fun for you. You'll be just the right bloke to be doing it, mate. I reckon.
I'll be having a crack, Simon. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, I know you will. No, brilliant.
Hey, look, Tony, greatly appreciate having you on board. Yeah, I admit, go the bloody Bays. Yeah, and that's no. Well done, mate. Seriously, great stuff, and greatly appreciate it. And I really, more importantly, appreciate your role, what you do out community-wise as well.
Thanks, guys. Lovely to talk to you, and hope there's something there that you can use and gives a little bit of entertainment for whoever might be listening.
We have plenty of listeners that listen in each week, and they always look forward to our segments with our past legends. And well done to Glenelg, and I know you're revelling in their victory, and who knows, they might go back to back.
Great. Hope you're right. All the best, boys. Great talking to you.
Catch up soon. Thanks, Simo.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Happy days.
All right, and to kick off happy days today, happy birthday, Tyson Stengel this week. Originally drafted by Richmond, then traded to Adelaide, and then found himself at Geelong, drafted in 2017 from the Woodville West Torrens Football Club.
Yeah, ability up in the air. I certainly know that some people at Woodville West Torrens don't think Adelaide Football Club handled him very well and did the right thing, and Adelaide Football Club made many errors. I'm in the bit of, well, Tyson made plenty of mistakes, but to his credit, he's the first delisted free agent to be an All-Australian, which is a huge achievement in that way. So he had that huge year, big part of Geelong's flag. Injury troubles last year and probably fell away a little bit like the whole Geelong side did, and probably harder as a forward as well at Catland last year. So wait and see there, but he's always going to have 2022 with him.
What a year.
Yeah.
Currently, or still living with Eddie Betts, obviously a mentor from Adelaide here, and then obviously down to Geelong. It's going to be an interesting 2024 for Tyson. It's also going to be interesting to see how Brisbane and Collingwood come back from a grand final, because the two teams that generally make it just struggle that little bit the following year. The only thing that's positive, I suppose, from a Collingwood point of view is they seem to be pretty young-ish, apart from Pendlebury.
Yeah, and they did come from the lost a prelim final by a point the year before. I think it's more the team who gets thumped in the grand final seems to fall away, that it really messes teams up mentally, where Brisbane, it was a contest down to the wire. Pick up Dode, haven't really lost too much.
And if they keep their winning form, obviously,
so,
like Geelong. This is where I was sort of leading into, in that Geelong do play quite a few games down there at GMHBA Stadium or Kardinia Park or whatever. Their renovations would have finished by then, so the capacity's obviously higher as well, which means that they're probably going to get a few more games heading down the highway there. They could be a pretty formidable team come next year as well, but again, age is going to catch up with them a little bit. Wait and see. All right, we move on. This week in 1964, swimming, Australian swimmer Kevin Berry sets a world record of 2 minutes and 6 seconds to beat American Carl Robbie by 0.9 of a second. Win the men's 200 backstroke and gold medal at the Tokyo Olympics.
I could have beaten him provided I was driving. Fair effort by Kevin Chuck Berry. So, well played.
Very, very good. All right, we move on to tennis. In 1974, Australian tennis star Yvonne Goolagong wins her first WTA Tour Championship, beating Chris Evert 6-3, 6-4 in the final at Los Angeles Sports Arena.
I say that rivalry with Goolagong, Corley and Evert was probably as loved by everyone. They were the darlings of everyone. Like, you didn't hear a bad word about either of them.
Yes.
So it's interesting where, there was, say, the Navratilova, or wasn't, but there was the big love for both of them, probably as much love as Australians ever had for an American. So, interesting there.
It's amazing the Navratilova and Evert. people thought there was a massive rivalry, and yet they're the best of friends.
Yeah.
I've seen a documentary of them driving around the countryside and just absolutely enjoying their time together away from the court, saying that, you know, it was amazing how that everyone thought that it was this, and yet we were that. And
on court.
And on court, and same with Corley and Everett as well. So, all right, mate, I knew this one would get you really, really excited, and I did tell you before we did the episode here. In 1986, an Australian cricketer set a bit of a record that I don't think you knew about.
No, I did not.
Which surprised me, and that is Alan Border actually scored the 1 millionth Test run in all of Test cricket versus India and Bombay.
I will be honest, I'll be using that. I might send that out to a few people and see if anyone else around have played with him in that time, the contacts I have got in that, whether anyone else knew that, because I'd never heard that before, and I'm surprised as a cricket nut to have never heard that. So I think that is a fascinating one, mate.
Mate, sometimes when you do a bit of research and a little bit of digging, I know you love your cricket, and we are coming into cricket and tennis season a little bit at the moment. I thought I had to chuck in a cricket stat, and that one there even blew me away, and I thought, he'd know this one. I'm preaching to the converted, but you're blown away.
No, I am. I will send that through to Timothy Bryan Alexander May and see whether Maisie knew.
Breaking news. Malcolm's speechless.
Yeah, no, I'm very impressed.
Very good. And we'll finish off with motor racing. Brazilian McLaren driver Ayrton Senna clinches his second straight and third overall F1 World Drivers' Championship by finishing second in the Japanese Grand Prix.
And you just always say, same thing, just with the sadness and with what ended up happening. You just, it just makes it harder, that's all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolute champion, but, you just, the what-ifs. Yep.
Totally agree. All right, let's get into the extra time big finish.
Extra time big finish.
All right, mate, we start off with netball. The pay dispute continues. It sounds like it's coming to a little bit of a resolution, but they keep winning.
Yeah, which is something because, as we hinted at earlier, it's a real hard one because they are losing players to football. Potential elite players in all other sports are being drawn to football because of the rewards on offer. So it's a hard one. There's a lot more competition out there for the sporting lady girl which becomes lady than what there used to be, where it was almost netball or tennis.
Yes. Where
all of a sudden,
soccer's now
and
going well. AFLW.
Yep.
Even the rugby starting their own W League as well. So
it's a lot more.
There is a lot more competition. So it'd be interesting to see how this one plays out. All right, the baseball, mate. This one's probably a little more up my alley, but we are getting towards the World Series. But we've currently got 4 teams left. The Houston Astros v the Texas Rangers, with Texas leading 2-0 at the moment. Looks like Texas will probably get over the line there. And then the Arizona Diamondbacks against the Philadelphia Phillies, leading that series 2-0 as well. The Phillies do have a bit of an affiliation with the Adelaide Giants, which is interesting, just to throw that one in there, that they are also going to be still sending some players down feeder this year as well.
Yeah, we're one of their feeder teams, and I think there's been that related. It'd be interesting to see how many. We will look that up for how many years that relationship's been going for now. So, it is certainly a link with Adelaide, with
the Philadelphia,
with the Phillies,
absolutely. Some well-known teams like the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees, not to be seen this year. So a little bit of a changing of the guard. I think the MLB, from a crowd point of view and maybe a viewing point of view, maybe a little bit down because some of those bigger markets aren't in the finals, but still a very, very good opportunity for these teams to strut their stuff.
Some new blood.
Absolutely. All right, we move on to car racing. Oscar Piastri starting to deliver. Runner-up in Qatar, now sitting 9th in the standings.
Yeah, certainly displaying promise and showing, and I'm not going to have a crack on the last name, but Oscar, is certainly he's becoming more and more a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Moving up the ladder is probably a way to a fair
He's
analogy.
only 22,
Yeah, he's not
23.
old. No.
Ricardo obviously looks like he might have a spot for next year as well.
Yeah.
So interesting to see how that one's going to play out. And then a little more locally, Shane Van Gisbergen wins the Bathurst 1000. Again. Might be off to the US a little sooner than we thought.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. Shane's class act and Bathurst. I admit I haven't spoken to Lord Voldemort, a previous guest on the show. Roger James goes to Bathurst every year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when the last time he hasn't. Obviously,
Probably
COVID.
COVID,
But if we're not going to count the COVID years,
Yep.
I think Roger's probably 20, 30 years straight, whatever. He is a Bathurst.
Is he a Ford or a Holden man?
Well, it was good to see there was a photo of Rog there at Bathurst wearing his Red Legs gear. So that
I did actually see that.
With
Yes.
a Nord supporter, put that up, and I probably should have put. Well, if you're going to if you want to catch up with Rog, just go to Bathurst each year. So
Right.
yeah,
Maybe we'll do a personal interview with him at some stage at Bathurst. All right.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
That
Politely. Yeah.
All right, mate. And just to finish off, the good, the bad, the ugly for this week. You good for this week?
I'm going to go I'm going to go on a bias one. Why not? The good as the mighty, high-flying Redbacks. Never disappointed a South Australian sports lover in their life.
Yep.
Yeah, Pinocchio just went through the wall.
You're bad for the week, mate.
Again, I'm going to stay on the Sacker.
Yep.
$10 to get in today, $17 to park your car. For goodness sake, common sense, throw the gates open. 50-odd people in Adelaide Oval to watch South Australia finally win a game. South Australia winning Shield games do not grow on trees. Use a brain, South Australian cricket.
Fair call. And I presume that would probably be your ugly as well.
Why not? Leave it at that.
All right. My good for the week, Adelaide Crows continuing their winning ways.
Yeah.
Again, watching some of the games this year, the ball movement for me has been really, really impressive from some of the teams that have been in the system for now. What are we, season number 8, I believe? Some of the ball movement from some of those more established teams has been really, really good and unearthing some really, really, really good talent along the way. My bad for the week is probably the 36ers. I'd hoped a little bit more from them to start the season this year, but again, early days, so let's see if that one turns around. And my ugly, I can't disagree with you that we should be making it more accessible for people to be watching Shield games. I can understand if it's Australia v India and you've got 50,000 people screaming at the gates to get in. You want to try and encourage as many people as possible. So, yeah, I'm hoping that tidies itself up over a period of time, but we'll see how we go. All right, mate, we're going to finish on that note. Huge episode once again. We apologise for this one being a little bit late with some technical issues last week.
A few things have happened.
Exactly, and I think we're coming up on our 50th episode. So we look forward to celebrating with you, the listeners. And we'll see how we go. We promise to do better next week.
We even got a couple of questions. People came past the scoreboard. What in the hell's happening in your podcast? So that was the impressive part. Thank you, Pagey, for that at the footy last Friday night.
Fantastic. Well, we hate to disappoint. So we definitely promise to do better then.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at Sportscast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.